So I'm responsible for the research trials that take place at Leicester General Hospital, Leicester Royal Infirmary, Glenfield Hospital, Kettering General and Northampton General. And it's my responsibility to make sure that we maximise opportunities, that we do the research according to the rules, because the governance around clinical research is extremely complicated and very important, and to make sure that we give opportunities to patients and to staff to take part in research. Cancer research is one of the jewels in our crown, and we can come on to some of the details about that in a minute. But I'm just, sorry Nigel, I'm hogging the mic here, but I think it's just worthwhile thinking why we actually do clinical research. And obviously it's important to find new treatments for patients who've got disease, that's clear, and that's one of the main drivers. But there's actually more to it than that. And we know that hospitals that are research active have better outcomes for patients. Research drives clinical quality. So for example, hospitals that are active in clinical research have got lower mortality rates than hospitals that are not, for a whole variety of reasons. Hospitals that have got active research programs have they have a more stable, satisfied workforce. So there are the obvious reasons we do research, but these other reasons are also very important. So trying to drive research quality into hospitals is to everybody's benefit.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks, Nigel. A question that people ask me is, why do we have a cancer trial centre in Leicester? They're not all over. Not every trust has a clinical trial centre. So what's the added value of having the Hope Cancer Trial Centre here in Leicester?
Yeah, so I think I often reflect on, if I was starting my training now as a junior doctor, what I would do in terms of what I would be interested in and what might drive my thinking for a 30 or 35 year career. So when I started, it was kidney medicine. That was what really took me. I think now, if I was thinking about a career in hospital medicine, I'd be thinking about oncology, simply because the pace of change is unbelievably rapid. And the pace of change is driven largely by new diagnostic techniques for making diagnoses of disease, but even more so, new treatments. And there's been a complete transformation in the way that cancer is treated over the course of my career. So we've been able to move from, what you would all understand as chemotherapy, to something which is much more sophisticated, much more biologically targeted, and certainly much more effective. So cancer research, I think, is an area of real expansion. The problem with it is that it's quite complex to deliver. You can't just deliver cancer treatments in clinical trials to someone sitting in a chair in outpatients. It's far too complicated for that. And therefore you need a special facility to bring patients in and deliver their cancer trial therapy alongside their clinical care. And the Hope Against Cancer Trials Unit at Leicester Royal Infirmary has done just that. And so there's a clinical trials unit at Leicester Royal Infirmary which is embedded alongside the clinical service. And if you want research to work, you've got to put it where the patients are. There's no point having it standing in a green field 20 miles away. It's got to be where the patients are. And the Hope Cancer Trials Unit at Leicester Royal Infirmary has been absolutely transformative for Leicester.
Okay, thank you. And a question related to that, I suppose. Many of the people and businesses in this room would have helped Hope to raise £1.3 million in 2020-21 to expand that centre to the facility it is now. And you all know, as a Hope trustee, that we've committed to raise and spend £300,000 of late to invest in a new research suite, to help to invest in a new research suite at the LRI. So what's the significance and why is that development so important?
Okay, so if you go to the Osborne building at Leicester Royal Infirmary, which is where cancer services are based, on the top floor is the Hope Clinical Trials Unit. And if you go into there, you will see patients receiving their clinical trial treatment in the Hope unit. This is what you might call sort of front of house activity, if you like. It's obvious, patients are there, they're having their treatment, and that's the kind of, the most evident part of the process. But actually, there's tons of stuff going on behind the scenes, which is equally important. There's sort of what you might call the back office type functions that nobody sees, but are vital to support the front of house. So, for instance, if you're a patient on the Hope Clinical Trials Unit in Leicester receiving an immunotherapy for your cancer, that treatment has to be made up and prepared by a pharmacist. And the pharmacists are part of what you might call the back office function. You don't see them, but they have to prepare that treatment for the patient. And because these are very complex biological treatments, they have to be made under very strict conditions, and Hope Against Cancer are currently funding the development of a suite which nobody will see, but which is absolutely essential for delivering that kind of treatment.
Okay, thank you. And talking about that, the hub as it's being built here and the expertise, there are cancer research hubs in much larger cities, aren't there? So how, for want of a better word, how does Leicester perform against those? Do we know?
Yeah. Okay. So there's a network in England called the Experimental Cancer Medicine Centres, and there are 17 of them across England. These are externally funded, and you only get funding for them if you're good. If you don't meet the mark, you don't get the funding. Leicester has one of these. There are only 6 in England outside what you'd call the Golden Triangle, and the Golden Triangle are London, Oxford and Cambridge. So Leicester is performing in the same league as big cities like Birmingham, Manchester, Newcastle. There is no other experimental cancer medicine centre in the East Midlands. There are other big cities in the East Midlands, but not with one of these. And I have to say, in large part, this is an attractive investment for an experimental cancer medicine centre, because we've got the facilities in place which have been supported by the third sector, and particularly by Hope Against Cancer.
Great, thank you. That's very good. So, Group Chief Executive of the UHL Trust, Richard Mitchell, said, and I quote, I have to read his quote, "Under Nigel's leadership, UHL has become one of the most research-active NHS trusts in the country, engaging more patients than ever in clinical trials." So, what's your vision for strengthening and growing research opportunities for patients, Nigel, and teams in Leicester and Northampton, and what role do you see Hope playing in that?
Yeah, thank you. I think it's important that people in the room understand that the NHS doesn't fund research. The NHS funds clinical service, the services that we all use, but it doesn't provide funding for research. It might provide infrastructure to support research, but it doesn't actually fund the research itself. So my role is to make UHL an attractive investment vehicle for people who want to support research activity. So I've got to be able to attract in external funding to the organisations to allow them to perform. And so I've got to make UHL look good, and partly that's by getting the right staff in place, and partly I think it's about culture. And many of you who are in business, and I know we work in completely different fields, but you can only make things right and work well if you've got the right culture and you've got your workforce pointing in the right direction. Everybody's aiming for the right goal. So I spend a lot of my time trying to make sure that culturally people are in the right place, that we provide them with the support that they need to do their job, and that we can put in place the funding to support all of that. So to give you some examples, if we look into Leicester's hospitals at the moment, I'll just restrict myself to Leicester for today, we've probably got about 1,000 clinical trials in progress in the hospitals. And this figure I'm going to give you now, I know because I looked this up for something else the other day. We've put 26,000 patients through clinical trials this year. And a lot of those have gone into cancer clinical trials. And these are some of our most important things. So if I can set the tone, get the culture right, describe the organisation as something that's attractive as an investment for a research funder, then we can do all this stuff for patients.
Yeah, that's great, thank you. Excuse me. One or two more questions. Something happened in 2022, going back a bit, with the National Institute of Health Research, where they invested a lot of money here, and it put, as we understand it, cancer as a priority theme alongside, say, cardiovascular diseases and respiratory diseases. So what's the impact on that in terms of cancer, personalised medicine and prevention and treatment?
Yeah, so what Nigel's referring to is one of these external research funders that we try and attract. And a lot of our funding comes through an organisation called the National Institute of Health and Care Research, or NIHR. It's an arm of the Department of Health. And every 5 years or so, they have competitive funding schemes that we can apply to get investment into Leicester to support our work. And for the first time, we were able to get money for cancer research as a theme in these in this investment vehicle. £27 million we were able to attract. Outside of London, how many similar places have got cancer themes like that? No, only Leicester. So this means two things, right? It means that we can offer this service to patients and our staff, but it's a mark of credibility. It means that we've been judged externally to be competitive and amongst the best. So if I can go to funders and say, look, we've been funded by X, Y, and Z, it gives the next funder confidence that we'll do what we say we're going to do and that we'll use that money effectively.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to open up questions to the floor shortly, but last question. These have been kind of technical, high strategic questions, but what's the next step? What's going to happen in research and innovation for Leicester in the future? Your aspiration, really? Yeah, so I'm going to
specifically talk about cancer research, since that's the focus. So traditionally, as I've mentioned a few minutes ago, we've all thought about chemotherapy as the treatment for a whole variety of different types of cancer, and in many ways it still is. But chemotherapy is a very blunt instrument. It's basically a poison, and it poisons cancer cells. But the reason that people get side effects from their chemotherapy is because it also poisons healthy cells, and it makes people unwell. New treatments are much more targeted than that, and they're treated at specific biological characteristics of individual cancers, which allow us to target treatments much more effectively. So you might have heard about something called, has anybody heard of CAR T therapy? Yeah, okay, so what we can do now, and there's a facility about to open at Leicester Royal Infirmary that will do this. We take patients who've got cancer, we take their blood, and you can spin out of the blood the specific immune cells that are related to the way that the body deals with cancer. So it's been said that many of us will develop cancer every day, and that our immune system detects it and destroys it before it becomes an illness. And that people who develop clinical cancer, for some reason the immune system has kind of lost track of it. So we can take the immune system now, we can take it out of the patient, we can put it into a test tube, and we can adapt the immune system to target the cancer in the patient. We adapt the cells, and we put millions of the cells back into the patient, and that attacks the cancer that's specific for that individual. And this is fantastic, you know. I would like to see this kind of approach for diseases in all sorts of specialties, not just cancer, but cancer is in the vanguard of this. So what is my aspiration? I want to see more of this. Lots more of this.
Brilliant, thank you. That's great, Nigel. Thanks very much for coming up and giving us that insight, and I hope it's giving people things to think about. So if it has, Nigel's happy to take some questions from the floor. Just grab a mic Okay.
Don't let Mr. Geiler ask any
No.
questions.
Let's start with Ian and thanks, Nigel.
Hello. Yeah, thanks very much for that. The interesting bit in terms of the future is that the research is not funded by the NHS, so it has to be funded from somewhere, which I presume cancer research play a massive part in that. Hope Against Cancer is a much smaller charity, but do you want to just sort of outline the role as a catalyst which Hope Against Cancer plays?
Yeah, okay, I will. So thank you. Most of our cancer funders, the ones that I just talked to you about a few minutes ago, they don't fund capital. Or if they do fund capital, it's small stuff, bits of equipment and that. If you want to build a building or refurbish a floor, very difficult to get capital to do that. Hope do that. And they've been responsible for most of our capital cancer developments in Leicester. I can't state that any more strongly, really.
Sorry, I'm just hogging things.
There's a gentleman over here, actually, as well.
What role can Hope Against Cancer play in actually perpetuating that or growing that shotgun approach? It's just really so people can know where their money's going to go and a reason for. Cause that to me sounds a fantastic opportunity for us.
Well, I think to provide assurance to a cancer like Hope, which is a local organisation, it needs to be embedded with the local organisations it wants to work with. So we refer to hospitals, trusts as a kind of anchor organisation in a community. And I think if an organisation wants to work and give money to that organisation, they need to have access to the highest level in that organisation. And I know that Hope does that with UHL.
Good afternoon. My name is Ninda Johan. We're great supporters of Hope Against Cancer. In fact, next Friday we're holding an awards night supporting Hope Against Cancer. You'll have noticed from my accent I'm not from these parts. I'm across the border control from the West Midlands. So my question is, AI is all over the news, and most people see it as losing jobs. But actually, how can you harness AI to make possibly cancer no longer the curse that it is?
Well, I think that's a very good question. And a few minutes ago we were having a conversation on our table about data, weren't we? And how you can harness the power of data. And I'm not an AI specialist, so I can't talk technically about how that works, but AI only works if you give it information. So I think we need to work very hard to get the right information out of our clinical IT systems in our hospitals to be able to provide AI models, machine learning models, to help clinicians and managers to do their job as effectively as possible. And as we were saying, it's going to need a little bit of investment to help make that work, but I think that's essential. Any more?
Okay.
I'll just
Ian again.
Sorry, I didn't mean to. I might as well just butt in with this one. One of the areas that I know that Nigel, I didn't know Nigel until I joined the Hope Against Cancer Trustees Board, and but I do know quite a few people who are playing rock bands. Nothing of the David Gilmour's fame, I'm afraid, but Nigel is actually a rock star.
Which one?
Not to embarrass you at all, but I'm just wondering whether
I think that's slightly overstated, actually.
it would be good to have perhaps at one of our future events, Nigel Rose, we could have Nigel performing a few songs, even if it's acoustic.
Yeah, so, okay, I'm just going to add a little bit of it further. One of the things that we did many years ago now is we had, when we used to have fundraisers for kidney research and kidney patients, there were a number of us in the kidney department who could play instruments or sing or hit drums or whatever. And we put a little group together, and that was about 20 years ago now, and that's continued with some changes in membership. One of our members actually had cancer during COVID, and she had treatment for breast cancer, and she was treated in Leicester. And this is all very personal to everybody, really. So yeah, thank you for bringing that in.
Thank you. Thank you, Nigel. Well, yeah, thank you. I've been brilliant, Nigel, and you've been even better.
There's kind of double acted, the two Nigels.
Okay.
Yeah,
No, thank you very much, Nigel, for giving up your valuable time and for all you do for Hope, and I hope that was very interesting and insightful for people. Thank you very much.
No, you're welcome.